The working prototype of the unreleased WorkBoy, which is an add-on for the Game Boy, has finally been uncovered by video game historian Liam Robertson. I think both you and I, Swinny, watched this video when it came out because we probably are very big on their channels. So it popped up in my feed straight away, and I was like, "Oh wow!" So again, the WorkBoy. So I'd always heard of the WorkBoy. The WorkBoy, it had its own like hardware keyboard that plugged into the Game Boy. So the same port, I believe, that you use to transfer games to other people. It also had software with it. So it had 12 apps, addressable calculator, etc., PDA stuff. And yeah, there's a really cool video on it on the Did You Know Gaming YouTube channel. You should check it out.
I need to subscribe to that. So you guys sent me the link, and legit, this was one of the coolest things I've seen on YouTube for some reason. I don't know why. I just think it was really well put together.
So well.
It was awesome to see the part of the history. The guy interviewed the people that worked on it. There was a bit of investigative kind of work. The cool coincidence that I don't want to spoil was really cool. And yeah, it was really, really sweet. In terms of the device itself, I don't know if you guys had big thoughts that you wanted to sort of talk about it. I'm not surprised that it didn't really see the light of day. It's actually explained in the video why I guess it didn't, but I think from my perspective, I would have been surprised if it really made it big. I don't know. I mean, this was what, in 1992, 93, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
it was 92.
Was going to come out.
The thing is, though, like weird peripherals, I think were a lot more, almost more acceptable back then in some ways. Like the Game Boy camera had no right to be as popular as it probably ended up being.
But that was really cool. It was an awesome little thing.
Yeah, but
like
there's
back
like
then, there were no digital cameras. Like, there were, but it was like super hard to get your hands on a digital camera.
Yeah, the thing with this, though, I think the price point would have been really rough. Now, I can't remember how much, for instance, the Game Boy camera did cost, but I'm sure it didn't cost more than the price of the system. So,
well, okay, let's just spoil it for everyone. So, the Game Boy at the time was $90 US. And this thing was going to be, I think, 85 or something like that. But before they were about to sort of get to the final stages of finishing the product and trying to launch it, Nintendo announced that they were going to cut the price.
Well, I think it was rumored, right? That they were going to cut
the
price.
Rumored, yeah. So as a result, they kind of went, well, if this thing costs more than the actual console itself, is it going to sell? And I think they cut the project there as a result of that. I do want, it's one of those things that it really makes you wonder what a snowball effect it would have had in the industry, not just in the gaming industry, but I guess in the PC industry, the business industry. If this thing was actually released, the impact it would have had on people. And I'm talking about, say someone picked it up or their dad had it and they were really fascinated by it and they ended up kind of going into the industry and creating all these different apps and new peripherals for it. It could have like completely changed a lot of things, I think. So it's interesting that I think a little thing like that caused a Y fork in the technical roadmap of society. I think it's really cool.
Could you imagine walking to like a business meeting and then whipping out your Game Boy and the WorkBoy attachment? Like we've talked before about power moves. That's a power move. It's like
that is a power move.
That's my bloody WorkBoy. That's my WorkBoy.
Look at that off-white color on the Game Boy. Look at those. Look at the texture on that.
Okay, just because I'm a very weird person and I have access to a lot of different information because of this podcast, I actually can tell you the Australian price of the Game Boy camera when it came out. So the Game Boy Pocket at the time was $75. The Game Boy camera was selling for $90, and it launched at $100.
Whoa, so it was more.
Launched at $100.
And the Game Boy printer was $110.
Wow, how much was the Game Boy though back then?
I just said 75.
The Game Boy itself was 75.
Game Boy Pocket was 75.
Wow, so it was way more.
Yeah, well,
wait,
like
the Game Boy Pocket.
Yeah, because the Game Boy wasn't selling. So the Game Boy camera came out in 98, which to me it felt like Game Boy camera came out like 92 or something like that.
Yeah, it's way later than.
So it was like just 20 years ago that it came out. It's amazing how.
No, but
much
I think
it's
it's quite late in the cycle of the The Game Boy.
The Game Boy
How long
had a
did that
massive
console go
cycle.
for?
It was like 10 years,
It had a
12
huge
years.
cycle, yeah. And was it largely unchanged during that period, if anything at all?
Yeah,
Did
until they
really do
released
it?
the color in, from memory, 99. Color came out, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Was it pretty much
the hardware, like in terms of like the screen qualities and stuff, like there was significant changes in the different iterations they did there.
Oh, you
but
reckon?
It was mainly
The Pocket was just a slight better.
Oh no, I'm saying like the different versions, like the so
Can't remember.
the pocket, but also what was that one that was like a higher contrast screen or something? That was it was like a silver color.
Are you talking about the Game Boy Light?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that never came out in anywhere other than Japan.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, in terms of like, there were like, I think at the time what I would consider significant changes, but when it comes to the actual, I guess the chipsets and like, it wasn't until the Game Boy Color. Game Boy Color we've talked about is essentially a different system in a lot of ways. So
yeah, it's got the Game
totally
Boy chip on it, and then it's got an extra chip. So yeah, look, I actually think this device would have been sick. Like, this is really dating ourselves, but I remember when the Palm Pilots were coming out, and I'd go into, like, I think it was Tandy back then, and I don't know, I'd just covet this device. There's something, because at the time, we're in a totally different world. Like, my kids, they are going to grow up where, like, phones are ubiquitous and have always been there, right? It's like a little computer that you carry that's so much more powerful than the computer I had when I was a kid. But yeah, the Palm Pilot, I was just like, wow.
It was pretty cool.
Just so cool.
Yeah, I
like, I could do, and I've always been this crazy thing about productivity. And it's partly why I've automated so many things. Like this idea of, I could do this, I could save this. I don't need to have an address book. I could have my address book in here. All this
Until the batteries run out, or
it crashes or something.
It crashes or something, and it erases everything.
I think this thing I would have been so into. Like, I don't think I would have gotten it because it's too expensive. I didn't get a Game Boy camera. I remember when it was coming out, because I was working. It would have had to been back then. I think I was working like work experience at a game store. And
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So I have technically worked at retail game store. I feel like you have to do that if you're a content creator.
So can I just say, before we get away from that, I like that you worked at a video game store and Mike and I worked at the Magistrates Court in Victoria.
Hey,
we got to see all these murders. It was really
all
cool.
I could say is, I'm using my experience stories 20-something years later. So I think I will.
Working there for 2 weeks.
Can you believe they got me to actually add court records into their database?
That's crazy. Yeah, I remember that.
A work experience kid.
And they let us into the courtroom to watch all the murder cases. And I remember there was a murder case where they showed pictures of just this bloody bathtub, and I'm like, whoa, this is a bit insane for a kid, but hey.
Also, just putting the Game Boy camera back into context. So a Game Boy was like $75. Tetris was like $30 Australian. And then games that were coming out at most were like $40, $50.
So it's really about the same as today. Well, not the Switch, like a DS. A DS is like, what, $200? You get a game for...
You can't buy a DS, but...
70. I'm just saying, like, the relativity when the DSs were, the 3DS and 2DS and all those. Maybe relatively speaking, consoles are more expensive now, but that was actually a pretty good ratio. Half the price for a game, it's not bad.
From memory, I think it was like the Game Boy was like about $150 Australian when it launched.
Okay. And Tetris was 30.
Just getting back to the WorkBoy, I would have loved this. I think it's weird because I knew about the WorkBoy. What I didn't know, I don't know about you, Swinny. I didn't realize that the WorkBoy was unreleased because I'd seen images of it before.
Well, they went into that in the video where I think that's a common misconception that people thought it was just a very rare accessory. And I don't blame people because it was shown off in the gaming magazines as like, oh, this is a product that's come out, and because the internet didn't really exist in a general capacity at that point, you just assumed that stuff came out and you just didn't know what happened to it.
Because did you know it was out or not?
No, I well, honestly, I'd forgotten all about the WorkBoy until this story. So
Because I do think it's funny that the singer sewing machine accessory for the Game Boy. Have you heard about this, Mike?
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
This is wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that was released. That was released.
What? Now that is a
wasn't.
niche market.
It actually was
How many
released.
people had a Game Boy and were into sewing.
People actually who had it say it's actually a really cool like item. Like it actually is really smart implementation because you can. I think you can edit the patterns on the Game Boy
Okay,
itself.
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's quite clever actually. I guess
It is pretty clever.
I'm not too up to date with sewing machines, but I'm sure that there's like an app for sewing machines now, right?
For
They'd have to
advanced
be.
sewing
They would
machines,
have to be.
Yeah.
My sewing machine
I
doesn't
have
have
an app for my toothbrush. There's
What?
got to be an.
That's
yeah.
true. It's the dude, and that app is just it never works properly for me. But anyway,
My toothbrush has
got the same
achievements.
one.
My toothbrush has achievements.
exactly.
Can I just ask? But
What
it's
a
not,
world we
it's
live
not
in.
linked to Microsoft though, right?
No.
No.
Hey,
If it
well,
was,
you
he'd
gotta
be
ask the
brushing his
question.
teeth multiple times a day. He'd
I've
be
been
like,
grinding out the
he'd have
teeth
the
this
cleanest teeth. Yeah, exactly.
I've been safe
Pearly
scrubbing the
whites.
teeth.
Where are my teeth?
but
Save
yeah.
scrub. Did you say save scrubbing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great pun. That's a great pun.
So yeah, do you think that it was a bad idea or a good idea that they didn't release this? Because they did pull the pin because of the pricing, but
No, I think the pricing would have made it. To be honest, I
Mm.
think people would have still because it wasn't like a game or a peripheral that a lot of kids would necessarily use. I can imagine a lot of their parents going, "Oh, this is cool, and I might use this myself," and they would fork the extra cash.
I think it was
So-
a bad idea simply because of how much longer the Game Boy was in market for, which they wouldn't have known. So the fact
of
that
not releasing it, you mean?
yeah, so I reckon
Yeah.
so I reckon if they would have released it, considering the Game Boy, as you said, like Game Boy camera was what 98, this was 92.
Exactly.
Like there's actually in mid lifetime of the Game Boy, so there would have been a long time where they could have sold these things, and it was still a product that was being moved off the shelves. So
And once they sold a whole bunch of units, they could have looked at reducing the price, reducing costs, etc.
and they would
It's
have
a
been able
shame.
to
I really-
release like I'm guessing, I don't know exactly how the keyboard and the software, if this was possible, but they could have released like a second version of the software that had more or additional apps and stuff, so you could
potentially.
swap it in and out and things. But
I actually, because Swinny, what do you reckon? Should we just reveal some of the cool stuff that was in the video, or should we save it for people if they want to watch it?
I reckon we need to call out the ROM stuff at least.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, okay.
that's so freaky.
That was really cool.
Yeah, so what had happened is that they'd been working with the creator and the owner of the company that was developing this device, and they were actually able to secure a physical version of the device.
The only one in existence, basically,
that they know
is
of.
known.
Yeah. And when they plugged it into the Game Boy, they didn't realize that you need a Game Boy cartridge with it as well, which, it seems like a massive oversight. But anyway, so it was a bit disappointing for the creators. But then we actually covered this. So the leaks that happened, and, we haven't covered the recent leaks because, it's always a bit... it's a bit difficult, I think, with the leaks. I think in general we don't like to cover it unless it's really major news. But one of the leaks that happened was a bunch of Game Boy information was leaked in like one tranche of information, including Pokemon Picross game. I don't know if you've seen that, Swinny. But one other thing, and I remember at the time when this got released, that the WorkBoy, or one of the versions of the WorkBoy ROM, was actually released. So I don't believe this was the final version that they covered, that they sort of mentioned in the video, but it was a very mature version of the WorkBoy ROM. And those two things, discovering the prototype and the ROM getting released, totally unassociated.
Within 2
with
weeks
each
or
other.
something it was,
Yeah, it was
I
2
think,
weeks.
yeah.
2 weeks. Which
it's
is
just
crazy.
wild.
Really
Like
cool. Awesome coincidence.
it's just like if we're talking, how many years? What 28 years time frame there for this stuff to kind of align. It's just that's insane.
Yeah.
Man, I got excited watching the guy boot it with the ROM and it working. And I was just watching this video. Can you imagine? Was it Liam, I think? What was the dude's name? Sorry, again?
Yeah,
He did
Liam Robertson.
Yeah, imagine him. He would have been like, screaming off camera. Can't believe this is working. This is so cool.
Yeah, and like hats off to him. Like what a get as well. Like for this kind of very
awesome,
niche
yeah.
community, but I love this kind of stuff. And to be able to do something and discover something, add value to the community by, discovering this stuff. And then, it's just such a good video. It's an awesome video.
It's a really cool video.
Give it a like.
Also, kudos to the original, the maker who decided to send him the one and only sample. This thing could be worth...
Frank Ballouz or Ballouz?
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. This thing could be worth who knows what. I reckon it could be worth a mint. It really could be. It's the only known one in existence. And it's got history to it, and
I'm fairly certain he's giving it back to the guy.
Of course he would be.
Yeah.
But I was sitting there going, when he said, and then it arrived in my mailbox, I'm like, holy moly, I hope there was bloody registered post with insurance on it. Because you wouldn't want to lose that thing.
Having said that, the Nintendo PlayStation? Have you heard of this, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah. So that only sold for 300,000 US. Now, to me, dude, that is to me maybe the
yeah, but we're not all made of money like you, so
no.
That's a lot of money.
That was one of the most coveted things probably in gaming history.
That's what I was about to say. Sweet.
Yeah, you're right. It's weird that it wasn't a bit more.
I was about to think
but
I was really struggling to think through. I'm sure that there's something else, but I think you could easily make the argument it's the most important artifact in gaming. The Sony PlayStation. The Nintendo PlayStation.
Why though?
Because it's the whole reason why the PlayStation exists. What Nintendo did to them, and I'm a Nintendo shill.
I guess it's
but
true.
Nintendo did it to them, Sony.
Yeah.
They screwed them, right?
Yeah,
and then they went off and they created their own platform, and then it became bigger than Nintendo's, and they're doing different things now. And it's from a gaming perspective, it's such a critical crossroad.
Off a lot, yeah. It was
like
the snowball effect.
It's like the pivot point of modern gaming. You know, when you think about it, that's where everything changed.
Yeah, look, I admit it's
video games went from being toys in the general mindset to being entertainment products and products for adults and stuff at that point.
Yeah, and I think it's
you have Olympic
one device. So
look, I agree. You know how you have Olympic-sized swimming pools as the universal measurement of size? So you go, okay, it's about 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Yeah, I do that every day.
Every day, all the time. I use Corvettes, the Chevrolet Corvette, as a measure of the worth of something. And they're just for simplicity's sake, start at $50,000 US. So, that's 6 of those cars. I picture 6 of those cars in a garage versus one of these things. And I think you're right. I feel like it's worth more of them. I feel like it's worth at least 20 of those cars. Given the history.
When games that... How much... We've covered it a lot, Swinny, but how much are these Mario Brother games selling for? Hundreds of thousands, right?
Yeah, 150K and stuff.
And this is one game that you're right.
There's how many versions of them out there? This is a one-of-a-kind, unique thing. But anyway.
So that was a bargain, actually. We should have probably, chipped in and...
I think the guy was offered millions by people before, privately, and he turned it down, so he must be spewing.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, God, he must be spewing.
But I will say that stuff, there's possibly a lot of hearsay around that stuff as well.
Maybe, yeah.
Oh, but I'd believe that for that item, and given that Pokemon cards are selling for $500,000 and things like that, this is way more important than that. But yeah,
I gotta hit up the Selvers and Turak, see if anyone gave up any Pokemon cards.
But just closing out the WorkBoy convo, really cool item. Check out the video. Swinny, maybe we should include the link in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll
absolutely
add that in.
Yeah, it's a very cool video.
Help, wouldn't it?
awesome one to check out. So now let's jump into the